Every single day, your kidneys filter somewhere around 50 gallons of blood, pulling out waste, balancing your body's fluid and mineral levels, and quietly regulating your blood pressure in the process, all without you ever noticing any of it happening. And yet kidney disease remains one of the most under-recognized health problems that exists, often progressing silently for years before anyone notices a symptom, largely because the two conditions most responsible for damaging kidneys over time, high blood pressure and high blood sugar, they do their damage slowly and quietly as well. Diet plays a measurable role in how well your kidneys hold up over the decades, and there is one specific fruit that keeps showing up in the research on kidney protection, for reasons that go well beyond simply being healthy in a general sense. Eaten specifically in the evening, it lines up almost perfectly with what your kidneys are actually doing overnight. Today, we are going through exactly what that fruit is, the real mechanisms behind why it matters, and why the timing itself may carry more significance than most people realize. It helps to understand just how easily kidney disease goes unnoticed before getting into the specific research on this fruit. Kidneys have a remarkable amount of reserve capacity built in, meaning a person can lose a significant portion of their kidney function, sometimes as much as half, before any noticeable symptoms appear, or before a standard blood test shows a clearly abnormal result. This is precisely why kidney disease has earned a reputation among physicians as a silent condition, and it is exactly why the food choices made consistently over years, long before any diagnosis ever enters the picture, carry so much weight for long-term outcomes. The fruit is blueberries, and to understand why they specifically earn this recommendation, rather than the dozens of other fruits marketed as healthy, it helps to understand what actually damages kidneys over time in the first place. Kidney disease develops kidney disease, in the overwhelming majority of cases, from a combination of two underlying drivers: chronically elevated blood sugar and chronically elevated blood pressure, both of which place ongoing mechanical and chemical stress on the tiny filtering structures inside the kidneys called nephrons. Each kidney contains roughly 1 million of these microscopic filtering units, and they are remarkably delicate, built around a dense network of small blood vessels that are particularly vulnerable to the kind of damage high blood sugar and high blood pressure cause over years of exposure. Diabetes-related kidney damage, called diabetic nephropathy, and hypertension-related kidney damage together account for the majority of chronic kidney disease cases worldwide, which means anything that genuinely helps protect against both of these underlying drivers is doing meaningful work for long-term kidney health, not just addressing a vague, general wellness goal. This is exactly where blueberries distinguish themselves from most other fruit. They are exceptionally rich in a specific class of antioxidant compounds called anthocyanins, the pigments responsible for their deep blue and purple color, and anthocyanins have been studied extensively for their role in reducing oxidative stress and supporting healthy blood vessel function throughout the body. Research examining blueberry consumption and cardiovascular markers, including work published in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition, has found that regular blueberry intake is associated with measurable improvements in blood vessel function and modest reductions in blood pressure over time, an effect researchers believe stems from how these anthocyanin compounds support the release of nitric oxide, a molecule responsible for allowing blood vessels to relax and dilate properly. Since the kidneys depend on an enormous, delicate network of small blood vessels to carry out their filtering function, anything that genuinely supports healthy blood vessel function throughout the body carries direct, meaningful relevance for kidney health specifically, not just general cardiovascular wellness in the abstract. It is worth pointing out how directly this connects back to a well-established medical fact, which is that a large share of nephrologists consider blood pressure control to be the single most important modifiable factor in preserving kidney function over a lifetime, ahead of nearly everything else within a person's control. Medications that lower blood pressure, particularly a category called ACE inhibitors and ARBs, are specifically prescribed in many cases partly because of their kidney protective effects, independent of their blood pressure lowering action alone. A dietary pattern that supports healthy blood vessel function through food, alongside whatever medical treatment a person's doctor has prescribed, is working in the same direction as some of the most well-established pillars of kidney protective medicine that already exist. The second reason blueberries earn this recommendation involves blood sugar, and this is where they distinguish themselves even further from other fruit choices that sound similarly healthy at first glance. Despite tasting sweet, blueberries carry a relatively low glycemic impact compared to many other fruits. largely due to their fiber content and the way their natural sugars are packaged alongside those same anthocyanin compounds, which some research suggests may independently help blunt the resulting blood sugar response. Multiple studies have specifically examined blueberry consumption and insulin sensitivity, including a study published in the Journal of Nutrition that found daily blueberry consumption over a period of several weeks improved insulin sensitivity in adults with insulin resistance. A meaningful finding given how central blood sugar control is to protecting the kidney's delicate filtering structures over the long run. The third reason involves something that matters specifically for anyone already managing some degree of reduced kidney function, whether diagnosed or simply age-related, and this is where blueberries pull further ahead of many other fruits commonly recommended for general health. Fruits like bananas, oranges, and dried fruit varieties are often praised for their nutritional profile, but they also carry meaningfully high potassium content, a mineral that healthy kidneys handle without any issue, but one that can become genuinely dangerous for anyone with significantly reduced kidney function, since impaired kidneys lose the ability to clear excess potassium from the blood efficiently, and elevated potassium can affect heart rhythm in serious ways. Blueberries, by comparison, are naturally lower in potassium, relative to their overall nutritional density, along with relatively low phosphorus and sodium content as well. Two other minerals that require careful management in more advanced kidney disease. This makes blueberries one of the more broadly appropriate fruit choices across a wide range of kidney health situations, from someone with entirely normal kidney function simply looking to protect it long term, to someone already managing early-stage kidney disease under a doctor's guidance. It is worth being clear here that anyone with a diagnosed kidney condition should always follow their nephrologist's specific dietary guidance rather than general recommendations from any single video, since individual restrictions vary considerably depending on the exact stage and nature of kidney impairment involved. This distinction between fruits matters more than most general nutrition advice tends to acknowledge, since a lot of standard healthy eating guidance is built around the needs of someone with entirely normal kidney function, without accounting for how differently the body handles certain minerals once kidney function has declined even moderately. A fruit genuinely celebrated for its nutrition profile in one context can become a genuine concern in another, which is exactly why blueberries earn a particularly broad recommendation here, working reasonably well across a wider range of kidney health situations than many of the alternatives typically suggested. Now, here is where the timing specifically becomes genuinely relevant, rather than simply a matter of convenience or preference. Blood pressure follows a natural daily rhythm, typically dipping somewhere between 10 and 20% during sleep compared to daytime levels, a pattern researchers refer to as nocturnal dipping. And this overnight dip is protective, giving blood vessels throughout the body, kidneys included, a period of reduced strain during the hours the body spends in deep rest and repair. A late evening snack loaded with sodium, the kind found in many typical nighttime snack choices, works directly against this natural dip, since sodium intake close to bedtime has been associated with blunted nocturnal blood pressure dipping in multiple studies, meaning the protective overnight dip does not occur as fully as it should. Choosing something like blueberries instead, naturally low in sodium and rich in the same anthocyanin compounds already discussed for their blood pressure supporting effects, avoids working against that natural dip and may modestly support it instead. This overnight blood pressure pattern carries genuine clinical significance beyond just general wellness, since researchers studying cardiovascular risk have specifically identified people whose blood pressure fails to dip properly overnight, a pattern sometimes called non-dipping, as facing measurably higher rates of cardiovascular events and kidney-related complications compared to those with a normal nocturnal dip, independent of their overall daytime blood pressure numbers. This is part of why the evening period specifically, not just overall daily sodium intake, has become an area of growing interest among researchers studying both cardiovascular and kidney health together. There is a second, more specific reason evening timing matters here, tied directly to how the kidneys themselves operate on their own daily rhythm. Kidney function itself follows a circadian pattern, with the rate of filtration and the excretion of sodium and water shifting measurably across the 24-hour cycle, generally slowing somewhat during the overnight hours compared to daytime activity. Some researchers studying circadian biology in the kidneys have proposed that supporting the body with lower sodium, Antioxidant-rich food choices, specifically in the hours before this overnight shift begins, may work in better alignment with the kidney's own natural rhythm, rather than presenting it with a heavy sodium or blood sugar load right as it transitions into its lower activity overnight phase. This remains a genuinely newer, less extensively studied area of research compared to the more established blood pressure and blood sugar mechanisms already covered, and it is worth being honest that this particular timing-specific benefit is more of a biologically plausible, reasonable hypothesis than a definitively proven effect at this point. It is worth addressing something directly here, since a lot of content on this topic tends to overstate what any single food can accomplish. Blueberries are not a treatment for existing kidney disease, and no single fruit, eaten at any particular time of day, will reverse kidney damage that has already occurred. What the research genuinely supports is more measured than that, a food choice that avoids working against the two primary drivers of kidney damage, elevated blood pressure and elevated blood sugar, while actively providing antioxidant support to the blood vessel network the kidneys depend on, all without the sodium, potassium, or sugar concerns that come with a lot of other common evening snack choices. Fruit included. That is a genuinely meaningful contribution to long-term kidney health, particularly when repeated consistently over months and years, but it belongs alongside the more foundational pillars of kidney health: adequate hydration throughout the day, blood pressure management, blood sugar control, and regular checkups that include kidney function markers, rather than replacing any of them. For anyone wanting to actually build this into an evening routine, a reasonable serving is roughly 3/4 of a cup to 1 full cup of fresh or frozen blueberries, eaten on their own or paired with a small amount of plain, unsweetened yogurt if a bit more substance is wanted before bed. Frozen blueberries, worth mentioning, retain essentially the same anthocyanin and fiber content as fresh ones, since they are typically frozen shortly after harvest at peak ripeness, making them a genuinely practical, affordable, year-round option rather than something limited to blueberry season specifically. It is worth avoiding blueberry products with added sugar, including many blueberry-flavored yogurts, juices, and dried blueberries, since the added sugar in these processed versions works directly against the blood sugar benefit that makes fresh or plain frozen blueberries worthwhile in the first place. Portion size matters here in a fairly practical, common-sense way, rather than requiring any precise measurement. A cup of blueberries is a genuinely modest evening snack, low enough in overall calories and carbohydrate that it fits comfortably into nearly any broader dietary pattern, without meaningfully affecting overnight blood sugar, the way a larger, more calorie-dense snack would. For anyone managing diabetes specifically, checking in with a doctor or dietitian about how this fits into an individual meal plan remains worthwhile, though the relatively modest carbohydrate load of a single serving of blueberries tends to be far more manageable than most other sweet evening snack options people commonly reach for instead. There is a broader point worth closing on here, one that extends beyond blueberries specifically. Kidney health rarely gets the same attention as heart health or brain health in everyday health conversations, despite how central the kidneys are to nearly every other system in the body. Filtering waste, regulating blood pressure, balancing minerals, and even producing hormones involved in red blood cell production and bone health. Because kidney disease so often develops silently, without obvious symptoms until a significant portion of function has already been lost, the food choices made consistently over years, particularly around blood pressure and blood sugar, end up mattering more for long-term kidney health than most people realize, until a routine blood test eventually reveals a problem. A small, consistent evening habit like this one is not a dramatic intervention, and it was never going to be. It is exactly the kind of quiet, unglamorous, genuinely evidence-supported choice that adds up meaningfully over years of repetition, which is really how most of what actually works in preventive health tends to operate. The most useful mindset here is probably the simplest one. This is not a cure, a treatment, or a substitute for medical care, and framing it that way would genuinely overstate what any single food can accomplish. It is one small, low-cost, low-effort substitution, swapping out whatever salty or sugary evening snack might otherwise be reached for in favor of something that happens to align well with what the research actually says, supports long-term kidney and cardiovascular health. Small, sustainable substitutions like this one, repeated consistently over years rather than followed perfectly for a few weeks and abandoned, tend to be exactly the kind of change that shows up meaningfully on a blood test a decade down the road. If this gave you something worth adding to tonight's routine, hit subscribe because there is a lot more research-backed insight like this coming, and you will not want to miss it.